Hey there, thanks for joining us on the Chief Executive Aviator. I'm Simon Turner, your host, and if you're wondering what we're all about, well, we're pilots who happen to run businesses, or maybe we're business people who happen to fly. Either way, we've figured out that flying gives us a serious edge. Every week, I sit down with another pilot entrepreneur or executive who's discovered that their plane isn't just some cool ride, it's actually a secret weapon for growing their business. We're talking real stories about landing deals and actual landings, expanding markets, and yes, still making it home in time for dinner. Whether you're already flying for business or you're just dreaming about it, you're going to hear some pretty amazing stories about how aviation changes the trajectory of lives and businesses every day. So get your pre-flight done. We've got a great conversation headed your way. Well, welcome everyone to the podcast where we're going to talk about aviation in business and unpack some of the stories from folks that use aviation to grow their business. And today we've got two really, really special guests, and they use aviation in a pretty amazing way in their own businesses, but also throughout the community. And I just want to say a big warm welcome to Tim and Kelly, who are the creators and the pilots and crew of Farmland Fox. And I'm sure a lot of you have probably seen them on YouTube. And if you haven't, you got to look them up. But I appreciate you guys jumping in and agreeing to do this, and looking forward to hearing a little bit about what you guys do. And maybe you can sort of start off with a bit of an intro to yourselves and some background. And then maybe we can start with, after that, with a crazy aviation story if you've got one.
Well, glad to be here. I'll go ahead and start. My name's Tim Cobb. I own a company called Farmland Company up in the Pacific Northwest. Our business is a real estate business. It's a property management and asset management business. The property that we manage, however, are farms and ranches. So these rural type properties that are kind of spread out all over the Pacific Northwest and the Western United States. We go through several states in our efforts to care for this land. And yeah, that's who I am. My wife Janelle and we have 4 children. I have a married daughter and then 3 boys. And we're from the Spokane area.
Beautiful.
Yeah, my name is Kelly Ditto. I own a media production company, DittoFilm Media, also obviously here in Spokane. And I do all kinds of media and content creation, mostly videography, TV ads, YouTube videos, lots of marketing, nonprofit videos, live streaming, you name it. Whatever my clients are looking for. Love it. Love all things cameras and microphones, especially when we're talking about attaching GoPros to like airplane wings and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, it's something to get excited about for sure.
I got into videography, basically filming adventures. And so I enjoy making TV commercials and stuff. That's great. But what I really love doing is filming adventures. And so flying around in airplanes and filming it is about as good as it gets for me.
I bet. And how did you guys get connected? What's the history?
The history, my wife and I moved here about 13 years ago. Kelly and his wife Annie and their family were already here. We actually connected through our church group. We became friends that way, and then nice. as we moved kind of symbiotically in our businesses, I was here to actually retire a couple of great guys who started the business about 30 years ago. I was their succession plan. And so I kind of went that way, and Kelly was doing some other things, but then started had his media thing on the side, but then went full time with it fairly recently. And I don't know, we like to go out and do things. Our families are pretty symbiotic and just good friends, just became great friends. And it just made sense to be spending time doing things, helping each other in our businesses.
The truth be told, Tim is the reason I'm in business for myself. He's modest in the way he presented it. The truth is, videography was a hobby, and he kept telling me, you gotta go do this thing. So he comes to me years ago. He's on the junior livestock board. This is where these high school kids are raising animals and selling them at auction. And he comes to me and he's like, Kelly, we need to make a video for these guys. I don't have a video. This is kind of an old school thing. And we need to interview these kids. We need to show them with their animals. And I want you to come do it. And that was kind of my first commercial gig. It was really just a hobby. We've done countless projects together as Tim's really involved in the community. And finally, he convinced me that I needed to quit all the other stuff I was doing, and just go full bore into video. Yeah, it's been awesome. Tim is a great mentor to all things small business for sure.
Love to hear that. That's the world needs more of you, Tim. I've sold a few of my friends into starting their own companies or joining kind of very early stage companies, and some of them probably regret it, but the majority of them have made more money than I have ever made. So I think it's worked in the end, and they're all far happier than they would be kind of stuck in a cubicle somewhere. So good on you for pushing Kelly out the door and getting him to spread his wings, and looks like he's doing a really bang up job of it too, judging by the quality of the content.
Incredible. Just an incredible job. It's interesting though. I mean, he continues to buy all this equipment, right, for his business,
Yeah.
And he gets all excited and he's telling me about the equipment. I'm like, bro, you got to remember profit. Okay. Remember profit. It's not just about getting the coolest equipment. It's not just about getting the, so we're working through this.
Also, Tim, I just raised your rates 15%.
Truth be told, he's actually kept my rates fairly steady. I know he charges other people more, which is fantastic. But we're in good shape. We're in good shape.
Well, hey, you fly him around, so that's a pretty good quid pro quo. Speaking of flying around, I guess you guys have been on some pretty awesome adventures together. Some of those shots of, during the harvest were amazing. Going leaf peeping, you nearly hit a cow, I believe. What other interesting things have you run into in your adventures, and perhaps what's some of the more crazy things you've seen?
I love that one. That most recent one where I told Kelly we're coming into that valley, and I said, "Now there's cows on the runway. They're not going to move." He's like, "Oh, they'll move. They'll move. They'll see you coming, and they'll move." And I had an experience prior to that because we own cattle. Actually, my family. Yeah. We're in the cattle business, and I had landed in a pasture once, and I'm like, oh yeah, they'll move. Nobody moved. I mean, they didn't know what was coming at them, and they're just like, and the sound's kind of behind you, and you just see this propeller coming, and I had to veer off a couple of times. But the story I wanted to share was actually the first time Kelly and I went out to shoot a farm inspection. So we go out to this place. It's called the Camas Prairie. It's south of here. It's a beautiful kind of prairie up high. They grow small grains and canola. And so these beautiful, yellow fields out there. I thought this would just be great. Our first stop, and just so everyone in your audience gets a sense of kind of the flying that we do, or maybe the landing that we do, is oftentimes we go out, we utilize this aircraft to land right in the field and meet with the farmer and or close to the field, because we don't want the farmer to have to come pick us up. We don't really have other transportation other than a one wheel in the back, which we do carry the one wheels, and that's fun. Yeah. That's fun. That's a little electric transportation. But so long story short, we get out there and I'm like, I think I have a sense of where I want to land. It's important to me that we don't land in standing crop just because it's the farmer's crop, right? And I'm not real interested in landing in a wheat field that's green. I'll land in a wheat field that's stubble from last year, but not in the green anyways. And so we find this spot, which we think is just perfect, right? And we're coming in, we fly in, and we kind of see it. I can see there's a bit of a bump or a couple of bumps. And so I get just past that. We put it down, and no joke, the grass was 5 feet tall when we got down. We thought this, oh, look at that. It'll be all right. We get down there. And so all of a sudden there's green, like just spitting up on the windscreen. And because the propeller
is picking up all the grass. Yeah.
And so, so I'm like, all right, that was all right on the landing. And so we go to take off though. After the meeting, we have the meeting. And we go to take off, and I go down, and I'm like, man, I don't know how this is going to go. But I turn around, and we come back. And so we try to take off. And then, mind you, this is the first time Kelly and I have landed and taken off together off field. Now, I had done a couple in practice and things like that. This is the first time. We had the aircraft maybe a month or two, right? And so we go, and I get the speed, and I try to take off and back down. And I try to take off and back down. And three times I tried to pull out of that grass until finally I just shut it down. And Kelly, kind of the wings are going like this. And Kelly looks over at me and he's like, everything okay? I'm like,
Shouldn't we be in the air by now?
Shouldn't we be in the air by now? I'm like, yeah, this isn't good. This isn't good. So we turn around, we come back, and we just jumped on the 2-lane, the county highway there. And I said, now we're taking off on the highway. But anyways, that whole day, like the windscreen was just greased with this grass that we had chewed up onto our windscreen. But we did all right.
Yeah, we figured out that it needs to be really short. The landing is not the problem. It's taking off out of it.
Our preferred runway is anything below this much.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's what we do. That's what we do. Jeez. Learned a lot about it.
So. Well, I wonder if a new KitFox mod could be like the hay baler out the back, and you could just flick it on the back, and then you could what a value add for your customers going out there. I love that.
Yeah, we mowed it down for him. That's for sure. In one strip, we mowed it down.
It's probably worth noting that now. It's, with some of these clients, Tim will call them in advance and be like, do you think that you could mow us a strip? And, and so we've had a couple of really cool runways mowed out for us. When they mow it, they're kind of invested in the whole process. They bring their grandkids out and it becomes like a little KitFox air show out there.
It does.
It's pretty fun.
That is fun. That is true. Yeah, those farmers are good. They're good to us, and they'll do just about anything for us. And we're able to land right at their place. And that's the key to our aircraft. That's the key to the reason we use it. But we made new definition for off-field landing on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I was going to ask about mowing the strip because I think I'd seen in one of the videos you had talked to a farmer who talked about sort of mowing you guys a runway, which is pretty fun and pretty cool. And I love that, you're able to kind of get the community involved, get everyone kind of involved in it. The videos that I've seen, people's entire families are kind of, as you say, coming out to see it. Did you sort of envisage that when you started this? Or did you have like a kind of vision of, hey, we're going to buy a plane and this is what we're going to create and this is how it's going to be a business tool, or has it just sort of happened?
That's a great question. I would say that it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
When I was investigating the KitFox itself, and I went down and I worked with a group called Stick and Rudder. Now, Stick and Rudder there's the manufacturer of KitFoxes that is in Southern Idaho, and then there's a school that is tied to the manufacturer who essentially, if you buy a KitFox, it comes with 8 or 10 hours of transition training through this school called Stick and Rudder. Well, I had gone down there, and to kind of make a long story short, I'd gone down there to just investigate the aircraft. I was looking for something that we could utilize just in about any application, either in either of our businesses, to get out and understand, to get there and quickly land and do what we needed to do and then get back. So when I went down to Stick and Rudder, when I was talking to them and they asked me one question, they're like, what are you going to use this for? And I said, well, I'm going to use it in my business. And they're like, oh, well, what kind of business do you have? And I said, well, we're a real estate management business. We're brokerage. And I'm just going to be out. I often call it my farm truck, right? People are like, so what are you using for? It's my basic transportation. It really is. And so when a light bulb kind of went off on Paul is his name, Leaderbrand, who's down with Stick and Rudder, a light bulb went off and he said, you're going to have there's going to be a lot of visibility of this aircraft across the Pacific Northwest with what you're doing. And so he, later on we talked about, actually finding one to buy. And then I ended up buying one from him in his school, which he had. There was a pilot going up into the airlines, and so there wasn't anybody to fill that seat to teach in school. And this one was probably their oldest one or whatever, but there was the one that they wanted to let go, and gave me an opportunity to actually get a fully certified, inspected KitFox, which is not the normal course sometimes for KitFoxes. You can build them yourself. You can have them built by a third party, or you can have the manufacturer actually build them as well, just depending on how you want to do it with KitFox.
Yeah, totally. I guess it's, you're buying it from the school where it's gone through. It's probably had to have 100-hour inspections and gives you a little bit more comfort than not knowing who perhaps built it in their backyard and what they might have been smoking while they were putting in the wing ribs.
You're exactly right. I just took it. I mentioned earlier that I just took it over for its annual, and for its inspection. And the binder is literally this thick. It doesn't actually close anymore. And it's all the history of the 100-hour inspections, of all the oil changes at 50 hours, it's on its second motor. I'm taking it a little bit longer than the school would have taken it. But it's in great shape. I mean, it's in incredible shape. And so, yeah, no, I feel pretty fortunate to have, received something that has a record that goes back to its birth date. I mean, the guys I take it to work on it, they're like, who owned this thing? I mean, I was like, well, these guys down at Stick and Rudder and Kid Fox themselves really do it right. They really do it right.
I love that.
Yeah.
And you mentioned just before about the visibility and sort of how it's going to be well known throughout your kind of area. Are you already starting to see kind of, I guess, somewhat like marketing impacts from that? Or is it just, are you getting the benefit from the fact that you can fly out to a property 100 miles away and not have to drive 2.5 hours or whatever?
Yeah. Well, I'll let Kelly speak to this one.
I mean, I do all of Tim's social media and his website, right? All of his public visibility. And so the first day Tim mentions that he came over to my house 13 years ago for dinner with his family, the first thing he talked about was someday I'm going to own an airplane. So here we were 10 or 11 years later, and he's finally getting this airplane. And for him, like he said, he actually calls it his time machine, right? Because instead of having to drive, 12 hours in a day to visit these farms, he can fly and do it in half that. Yep. So it's his farm truck, it's his time machine. But from my standpoint, I was like, this is a marketing gold mine, right?
Uh-huh.
So the first time we go and fly in it, I bring the cameras and I film it and I make a YouTube video and I throw it up there, and it gets a little bit of virability. It gets 15,000 or 20,000 views pretty quick out of the gate. Thought, okay, that was cool. And then he's like, I've got this multi-day trip, over to Montana. We're going to fly through Glacier Park and visit some farms over there. He's like, why don't you come? We'll bring the one wheels. We're going to land in, what was the little town? Conrad, Montana. We'll take the one wheels to the hotel, right? And I'm just like, yes, let's do that. Let's do that. So, I load up the GoPros and the cameras and the one wheels, and off we go. We fly through Glacier Park. I mean, the flight is just like, spectacular. And so again, I just kind of make this little YouTube video, and it gets a pretty good viral hit again. So from my perspective, it was like, this is really fun. And this is a fun way to talk about farming and flying. And so it kind of has become Tim and I tell people it's Tim and I flying around in a bush plane talking about farming. That's what it is. And that's what it's become. Yeah.
Really great. It's almost, you're somewhat like ambassadors for agriculture and for farming. And as you say, sort of presenting it through a different lens than perhaps, like, hey, everything on the ground and that sort of thing. And it's amazing to see. When I moved here to the US, I didn't think people would use aviation in farming and agriculture more than, say, spraying and that sort of thing. Because in Australia, the properties are so large that most large, what we call a station, which is kind of a ranch owner, will either have rotorcraft or will have fixed wing airplanes that they'll have multiple strips cut on their property because it's a 6-hour drive from one side to the other kind of thing. And, seeing your guys' YouTube channel really opened my mind. I thought, oh, wow, there's like another whole entire use for aviation here, and certainly in your line of work, Tim, to get around to so many places. And you say it's a time machine, and so many people that we talk to for this podcast and just in general, it's, they mentioned how much time it's saving them, how big of a tool it's become for their business. And it perhaps didn't always start out like that. And it was just maybe a hobby and something they wanted to do. But hey, now you can, as you say, fly around what would have taken you 12 hours of driving. You're doing it in half a day, and you're back home with your family for dinner. So it's a pretty cool tool to use. And on the Kit Fox itself, I'm guessing it's such a cool plane, you probably don't want to get rid of it. But what would be your dream plane if you did, or maybe add to the fleet?
Now, I had forgotten that I had told Kelly the first time I met him that I was going to own an airplane someday.
Not only did he tell me that, he told me exactly which airplane he was going to own someday. It wasn't the Kit Fox.
It wasn't at the time. It was, and the Kit Fox will always remain in the hangar. In some form. If it's this one, or if it's maybe an upgraded one, a 915, that would be really cool with the big stow wing.
Yeah.
But as far as dreams, maybe I have to go back to where I started in aviation. I started my flight training in 2003 and did a few hours. My dad and I actually went to do that in our hometown. And I think I got 5 or 10 hours in the air. And then I went to college and started a family, and you know exactly where the money goes when you go to college and you start a family. And so probably I didn't fly anything for another 6 years, right? And then I'm finally like, I just want to get my ticket. I just want to get my private pilot license done. And so I hunkered down. I went down and found a school and finished in 2009. And then again, because you don't own an aircraft or maybe don't have real great access to one, you just don't fly very much. You might fly here or there or whatever the case may be, but I just didn't really I had a desire. I felt like I had kind of a use because I was coming here and it was starting it, but it really wasn't, am I going to go land at the airport and have the farmer come pick me up? That really didn't work out. And so when I found the Kit Fox, I was like, okay, here's something I can just put on the ground right in front of wherever it is, wherever there's a decent county road with no power lines on it, or there's a decent stubble field, I can do that. But to my dream aircraft, honestly, general aviation has accelerated in many, many ways. I have always looked. I started in 2003, which was a couple of years after the Cirrus aircraft came out. Came out in 1999. They started with these glass panels and and it was kind of a mix of technology with the older, instrumentation and things like that. And so I just kind of always watched them. Should be told, I probably look at them 4 or 5 times a year on controller, see where the prices are going. But eventually, it was a couple of weeks ago or a couple of months ago, my son Jet and he's my youngest, and all of my kids love flying with me and all had a great time. But my aptly named son Jet, he and I were standing at the airport, and this Cirrus Vision jet pulls up, and the door comes down, and out pops this boy. It looked to me like a kid, like he was probably in his early 30s or whatever. And Jet's like, look at that. I go, yeah, that's the Cirrus jet. That's the one, Jet. That's the one we want. And so he comes out, but then his much older, wiser, and likely wealthier dad gets out of the other seat and pops down. I said, "That's us, son. That's us." It may take both of us to own that thing, but that's us someday. And so hopefully somewhere there's a Cirrus aircraft. The SR-22 would be plenty for me, and would just be. But those are a couple of my dream aircrafts. We actually happen to have. Right here in Spokane, we have a what they would call like a regional hub for Cirrus. And so they have sales, they have maintenance, they have schooling. That's all for Cirrus. So it couldn't have lined up any better. I don't have to go but 50 feet from my current hangar to go get transition trained. So hopefully that'll happen first, and then but we're getting hours. We're getting hours in the air, and we're learning all sorts of things. And someday.
Love it. Getting the insurance cost on the Cirrus down by getting the hours up. That's what you're going to do.
Yeah, there's a lot of 50-hour Cirrus owners out there, which I'm sure those are pretty expensive, the insurance. But, you get a couple, 300-400 hours, and, it'll get better.
Makes a difference. So. Yeah, absolutely. And I guess to get to the vision of the Vision Jet, you probably, you want to grow the business, obviously, to help fund the $645 an hour. I think that thing runs without the pilot.
Oh, we don't have to count. Do we?
I guess, one thing that's very, very common from what I hear is the amount of extra business that having the plane as one, do you have any kind of examples of perhaps, where having the plane has like allowed you to win a deal? Or obviously, Kelly, from you see the marketing impact of it, the leads it's generated, or, just the visibility from a branding perspective. Maybe you guys could just sort of talk to that.
From the perspective of the marketing guy, what Tim wants to be, and I mean what he is, and what he wants people to know is, if you have any questions about farming or farmland, Tim wants to be the first guy you call. When you think about like, I've got, my family has farmland, or, my parents died and they have this, we have a question about how much it's worth or what to do with it or who can take care of it. What we want to do is we want people to know that Farmland Company, that Tim and Janelle Cobb, they're the people that you can call anytime you have a question. And so creating kind of this Geico personality, if you will, with this yellow, bush plane.
That's right.
Yellow. That's what we're working to do. We even, Tim had the idea a few years ago to, Spokane does a really good regional agriculture show. And Tim had the idea. He's like, why don't we just bring the whole airplane into the ag show? So for a couple of years in a row, we wheeled that sucker in there. It was one of the absolute hits of the show. Like, who's this guy with the plane in his booth?
Yeah.
And how'd you get it in here? Is what they really want. Right?
Yeah, and and you got lots of quiet booths. There was no quiet moments. Everybody wants to talk about the plane, and so it's like, oh, you're the plane guy. You guys fly around and talk about farming. And so from a visual standpoint, it's kind of become synonymous with the brand and who we are and the accessibility that we want to create with the company.
Yeah, no, I couldn't have said that any better. And, recently to speak to a deal, it was interesting. I just closed a fairly sizable farm. A fella bought it. He's from Montana, and it's down south of, kind of the Pullman in the Palouse country in this area. If anybody knows this area very well. So very, very good wheat land, a couple $1 million transaction. And, I didn't find out though, that he met me at the booth with the airplane until I was almost done with that transaction. Like, I get to the end of the transaction, I say, hey, closing was going to happen during this year's, around this year's ag show. And I said, hey, I'm going to be down at the ag show. He's like, oh, I'll be there. You going to bring the plane again? I'm like, did you meet me there? I'm so sorry if I don't, I've been here. I've been working with you and been working for you for the last couple of months. And he's like, oh yeah, we chatted. No worries at all. You had 100 people standing there, but so the visibility with the aviation is twofold. The kids obviously love it. They come up to it. The high school kids, they're wondering what it is, but it's really the old farmers, farmers who, many of them have their pilot's license. Many of them have had a plane. I mean, it was so prolific in the 60s, 70s. And, when all those aircraft from Cessna that we learned in, right? All those aircraft were manufactured because so many people were buying general aviation aircraft back then. I mean, the cost was a little bit more attainable, even adjusted for inflation back then. And they're still in the air, many of them, but they would come, they would talk to us. And it was, I don't know, it's just become kind of a very nice hub to center our marketing and as well as continue to get really good, high quality content on agriculture out so people can know a little bit more about their food system, so they can know a little bit about what the weather impacts are to production this coming year. I mean, it may sound like a weather report sometimes, but rain makes grain, folks, and grain makes wheat and donuts and crackers and all sorts of stuff, right? And so we need every drop, and so we're watching it close, and we'll share with you what we learned out and about.
And I think even just the harvest video you did, just to speak to your point, the harvest video that you guys did, which the cinematography is amazing. Kelly, that's, I've probably watched that five or six times now. I think one of the things it did for me and the other people I've showed it to, it kind of like rung home about how important like family is in farming. And, you went and jumped in the truck to to help out basically. And you weren't there to do that, but that's what you got to do. And so much of agriculture is community and family and that sort of thing, and shows you what goes into, as you say, getting that cookie on a plate or getting the cereal box full. And a lot of people just don't even think about that sort of stuff. So hopefully your mission can bring some more light to that, and also sort of help you generate some of those leads, like you said about that guy from Montana. Do you have any advice for any others that sort of want to leverage aviation to grow their business?
That's a great question. Yeah, I mean, even in a small way, if you can leverage aviation in your business, it's hard to describe. It's hard to describe the feelings that I get when I know that something has utility, right? I'm a pretty black and white guy. I grew up on a farm. My family continues to farm. Every tool in the toolbox had to have a use at least at some point. Not all the time. There's days when I can't fly, and like yesterday, because it was hailing and sideways, currents, and it was 40 miles an hour. I'm not going out there when the wind is at 40 miles an hour, gusting to 50. But that tool is still in the hangar for the day that I can, and I can trim up. I can trim up and hopefully reach out further with aviation involved in my business. Now, there's a lot of applications and things like that you might not even consider, just from a standpoint of we've obviously talked already about time and actually cost. In the little kit fox, it's cheaper than driving my diesel truck around. It is cheaper, especially when diesel's at $5 or whatever it is. But it is cheaper to do that, and so there may be some cost savings in some of those areas. But when you love aviation, you tend not to count every cost, because if you did that, I likely would not always do it, because there are some of those things. But there are other things that, the chance to take a client. I've had a chance, sometimes I land on these farms, and I see the young son or somebody just kind of fidgeting, right? They're just like, and I'm like, do you want to go for a ride? And he's like, and they're like, absolutely. I got, well, don't you never ask, and I'm like, well, get in and let's go, and so you get to share the love of aviation, which is the love of lift, honestly. And lift is, when you can explain that we're going to get enough speed for that wing to just lift us off the ground, and we're going to be smart with everything that we do. We're not going to be reckless. We're going to do what we can and share that love of aviation with others. That can be part of your business as well. And whether that's a manufacturing business, whether that's a marketing business, whether that's a farm management business, a real estate business. There are applications out there where you would be able to benefit from utilizing it a little bit more in your business. I would say so. So go do it. I mean, if you're thinking about it and considering it, find little ways, and then find every excuse to be in the air is what I do.
Yeah. You and me both. And Kelly, what's the next mission that you're going to film with Farmland Fox?
We're starting to come to the end of winter, so stuff is going to start to green up, and so we're going to get out there. We're gonna see how the moisture is on the ground. We're going to start visiting the farmers. We're going to kind of kick off this third season, if you will, of Farmland Fox content, and just just looking forward to the stories that we can tell. I think this multifaceted, content that we're creating, it is about joy. It is about finding joy in your job, finding joy in the things that you do. It's about telling the story of the American farmer, where our food comes from, the people that are raising it. There is so much misinformation about what farming is and who farmers are, as farms are consolidated into bigger groups because of, costs. And we want to tell that story. We want people to hear what the salt of the earth farmers are doing for them, and why food is in abundance in America, and what we're doing to bring it to them.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. Kelly and I have we've been talking back and forth about an episode that we'd like to do that should hit some talking points, and it revolves around water. It revolves around the usage of irrigation water. We live in an area, and this will actually put us on tap to make sure we get it done this year by telling you we're going to do it. But we
Are we gonna
have
put floats on the Kid Fox?
no, we're not landing on the water, but we'll get close. We'll get close. But there is a very large and what I would call incredibly successful irrigation project that the government did back in right at the end of World War II. Behind the Grand Coulee Dam up in this area. And we harness one of the greatest rivers that come out of Canada, the Columbia River. One of the most incredible resources is harnessed in our state. And my family, that's where I grew up, was utilizing Columbia River water, and it's diverted one time behind the dam, and then it runs in this gravity flow system for nearly 120 miles. It is an incredible project, and we'd like to showcase that and talk a little bit about how water is utilized, talk a little bit about how we're making use of so many good infrastructure projects that happens, somewhat long time ago that are still being utilized in this area, in areas where you only get 6 inches of rain a year or 8 inches of rain a year, and we're able to grow, potatoes and huge cash crops out in those areas. And so that will likely be one of our episodes coming up.
Love it. Well, I want to say a big thank you from the audience, but also thank you from me for taking the time. It's been super interesting to learn a little bit more about the Farmland Fox and about how you guys leverage it in your business. Super excited to see the next episode, and I'll make sure I put links in here, and we'll pull in probably some footage as well, so people can follow along. Subscribe to the YouTube channel.
Be great, Simon. It was really excited to have a chance to be on with you today, and on behalf of Farmland Company, we're grateful to you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. We appreciate it, Simon. Great to talk to you.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, thanks for flying with us today. If you're getting value from these conversations with other pilot entrepreneurs and executives, do me a really quick favor. Hit that subscribe button or the follow button, depending on what app you're using, so you'll never miss another episode. And if you've got an extra minute and you loved us, drop us a 5-star review. Those reviews help other aviation-minded business folk find us, and honestly, they really just make my day. What about you? Have you got a story about using your plane to grow your business, or maybe someone you know? Well, shoot me a message on X at Simon G. Turner or at the Chief Executive Aviator podcast, or pop me an email, simon@turneraircraft.com. See you on the next Chief Executive Aviator.